Once upon a time in the peaceful town of Ikorodu, a baby girl was born in the family of Pastor Akin and his lovely wife, Abigail. The whole church rejoiced the moment the news broke. "It's a girl," they shouted with joy. Pastor Akin, the founder of Living Fire Ministries, called her Lola Aluwa, meaning God's wealth. Growing up, Lola's childhood was carefully guarded by strict rules. Her mother dressed her in long skirts, head coverings, and plain shoes. Her father would lay hands on her every morning before school, praying in tongues and declaring, "You will not be like the daughters of Jezebel." Lola didn't fully understand what that meant, but she knew better than to ask questions. Despite the strictness, Lola was a happy child. But even in her innocence, there were moments when Lola would sneak glances at girls her age walking past the church. Girls wearing jewelries, short skirts, and fitted clothes. Something inside her would flutter, but she quickly buried the feeling, afraid of what her parents or God might say. Lola's life was not just shaped at home. It was carved within the four walls of Living Fire Ministries. From Monday to Sunday, her schedule was a rotation of school, Bible study, choir rehearsals, and prayer meetings. Everyone in church admired Lola. Mothers pointed her out to their daughters, "Be like that girl. See how she dresses, how she walks, how she talks. That's a real child of God." But while Lola obeyed every rule in Scripture, there was a silent hunger growing inside her. At school, she noticed that other girls her age wore jewelries, fitted uniforms, and even had phones. At first, she brushed off the curiosity as temptation. But the more she saw the outside world, the more her inner questions grew louder. Why did other girls look so free and happy? Was it really a sin to look beautiful? Why did her classmates laugh at her clothes? Why was she the only one who didn't know what was trending? These questions whispered quietly in her heart, but Lola pushed them aside, trying her best to be the perfect daughter of a pastor. By the time Lola turned 16, things began to change, both in her body and in her thoughts. She had entered the stage her parents called the delicate season, and they became even stricter with her. Puberty had come with curves, emotions, and questions. Her classmates were already exploring social media, learning the latest trends, and talking about crushes. Lola, on the other hand, was still stuck between her Bible and hymn book. She felt like she was living in a world that had left her behind. It wasn't until JSS 3 that she met Zainab, a new student who had just transferred from a school in Abuja. Zainab was beautiful, fashionable, and spoke with so much boldness that Lola was both intimidated and fascinated by. One afternoon during break, Zainab sat beside her and said, "You have a pretty face, you know. You'd look amazing in makeup." Lola froze. No one had ever said that to her, not even her mother. "Makeup is a sin," she replied quietly. Zainab chuckled. "Who told you that? Looking good is not a crime, a beg." That conversation stayed with Lola for weeks. It was her first real challenge to what she had always believed. Not long after, Lola began sneaking glances at herself in the mirror when no one was home. She would use a little Vaseline on her lips and would take her skirt up to see how her shape looked. She definitely liked what she saw. She had a very beautiful hourglass shape that were always hidden in big skirts. Soon, Lola became skilled at switching identities. At home and in church, she remained the perfect pastor's daughter, modest, obedient, soft-spoken, and deeply spiritual. But once she left the gates of her house, a different version of her emerged. With the help of Zainab, she started learning how to contour her face, draw her brows, and apply false lashes. Of course, none of this ever made it back home. She kept a small pouch of makeup in her locker at school, hidden inside a textbook. She would clean her face thoroughly before heading home, making sure no trace of powder or gloss remained. Still, guilt haunted her at night. After every Sunday service, she would kneel beside her bed, crying and begging God to forgive her for wearing makeup. Her heart was a battlefield, one half desperately trying to hold on to everything her parents had taught her, and the other half slowly drifting into a different world. She promised herself she would stop each time, but the moment Monday came, the slay queen in her would rise again. Her double life had begun, and no one, not even her parents, suspected a thing. Everything took a sharp turn the day Lola's mother gifted her an Android phone for her 17th birthday. Only for school research and Bible apps, her mother warned. Lola nodded obediently, pretending not to be overly excited, but inside her heart was racing. A phone of her own meant access to the world. That same night, while everyone slept, she quietly downloaded Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat, setting up accounts with fake names and fake birthdays. So no one traced it to her. It was her first step into a world where no one knew she was a pastor's daughter. Within weeks, Lola's online presence grew. She posted carefully edited pictures. She watched makeup tutorials late into the night, practicing different styles in front of the mirror before washing it all off. In real life, she still wore long skirts and still sang in the choir. Her voice still moved the congregation, and her father still beamed with pride. But what they didn't know was that on Friday nights, when there were no vigils or church programs, Lola would sneak out through the back gate after pretending to sleep. Zainab, who lived nearby, would be waiting with extra clothes and makeup. Together, they'd head to parties, house hangouts, or go clubbing. What started as curiosity had now turned into full-blown rebellion. One Lola wasn't ready to stop. Lola's secret nightlife became more frequent as her confidence grew. She no longer felt nervous wearing short dresses, high heels, and full makeup. At night, she became Lele, the girl who turned heads the moment she entered a room. Zainab taught her how to flirt without saying too much, how to smile just enough to invite attention. Lola became popular among a small circle of Lagos partygoers. Some called her the girl with the voice, because she once sang casually at a house party and everyone had paused to listen. That moment only added to her charm. Lola never told them her real name or age. To them, she was a 22-year-old university girl. Her Instagram followers grew rapidly as she posted filtered photos from parties, dinners, and beach hangouts. But every post came with a fear. What if someone from church saw it? To cover her tracks, she blocked all her church members and even her parents' friends from her pages. She had mastered the art of living two lives without letting one spill into the other. But no double life is perfect forever. One Friday night, after a party that ended too late, Lola struggled to sneak back into the house. Her clothes were stuffed in a black nylon bag, her makeup wiped already, and her high heels held tightly in her hands. As she climbed over the back fence in the dark, her legs slipped and she landed hard on the floor with a sharp cry. Her brother Daniel, who had woken up to use the toilet, saw her limp into the house from the backyard. Their eyes locked. He didn't say a word, but from that moment, Lola knew her secret was no longer a secret. Daniel didn't say anything that night, but the next morning at breakfast, he kept staring at Lola with a strange expression. She avoided his eyes, pretending to be engrossed in her food. Her heart beat fast. She couldn't tell if Daniel would keep her secret or not. He was just 14, but very smart, and worse, he was close to their father. If he spoke up, everything would fall apart. That night, she tiptoed into his room and whispered, "Please, Daniel, don't tell Daddy what you saw." He sat up on his bed, blinking. "What were you doing outside at that time?" he asked. "I was just visiting Zainab." "It was her birthday," Lola lied. "I came back late, that's all." "Please, don't tell Daddy. He'll never forgive me." Daniel stared at her in silence, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I won't tell, but only if you stop doing it." Lola forced a smile and promised. She hugged him, knowing fully well that she wouldn't stop. But Daniel's silence came with a price. He started watching her more closely. If she came home too late from school, he would ask questions. The day Lola gained admission into the University of Lagos was the day everything changed. Her parents were so proud, especially her dad, Pastor Akin. "You're going to shine the light of Christ in that school," he said, placing his hands on her head in prayer. Her mother said to her, "My beloved daughter, please join a Bible-believing fellowship when you get to school." Lola nodded her head in agreement to what her mom said. The moment they dropped her off at the hostel and waved goodbye, a sly smile crept across her face. She was finally free. Lola's transformation was instant. By evening, she had unpacked the real clothes she had hidden under her books: crop tops, mini skirts, lashes, heels, wigs. Her roommate, A girl named Sandra gasped. Babe, you date this guys. I thought you were one church girl. Lola laughed. My parents don't allow me to dress as I want, but now I have my freedom, she replied. The two girls bonded quickly, with Sandra introducing her to the hottest spots on campus, club nights, social hangouts, and even paid ushering gigs. With her beauty, curvy shape, and confidence, Lola quickly stood out. She was no longer hiding. No one knew she was a pastor's daughter. To them, she was just a hot fresher with a killer wardrobe. She began slaying on campus with no apologies. Students talked about her in their hostels. Boys tried to shoot their shot, and older men started noticing her too. In her first semester alone, her roommates called her Queen Lele, and the church girl from Living Fire Ministries only showed up once every Sunday, when Lola called home to lie that she just returned from fellowship. As Lola settled deeper into university life, Sandra, her roommate, became her right hand in navigating this new world. Sandra was everything Lola had always dreamed of being: bold, unapologetic, and fiercely beautiful. She knew everyone and made friends easily. By the end of their first semester, Sandra had introduced Lola to a group of happening campus students who seemed to have it all: the money, the connections, and influence. Among these new friends was Amara. She was the definition of a baddie, sleek and polished. Amara was the queen bee of their social circle, and she immediately took a liking to Lola. Amara introduced her to other influential people on campus, like Folu, a business student who ran a secret modeling agency for university girls, and Nene, a social media influencer. But not everyone in Lola's new world was purely about the fun and games. There was Femi, Fola's close friend, a politician's son. Femi was charming but dangerous. He had a reputation for being a heartbreaker, and his flirting was infamous on campus. He'd pull up in his car, always dressed impeccably, flashing his designer watches and gold chains. Lola felt an instant attraction to him. They shared a few late-night chats, discussing everything from politics to their shared love for music. You're different, Lola. I like you, Femi said one evening, his voice smooth, as he handed her a drink at a party. The chemistry between them was undeniable, but Lola knew better than to fall for his lines. At least, that's what she told herself. Deep down, she wondered if Femi could be the next big thing in her life. As the weeks passed, Lola found herself drawn more and more to Femi. He had a way of making everything feel effortless, like he had the world in his hands and was just waiting for her to join him. The more time she spent with him, the more she could feel the tension between them. It wasn't just physical attraction. There was something deeper in his gaze. It was as if Femi saw through her and recognized the vulnerability beneath her. One evening, Femi invited Lola to take a drive with him. They cruised through the streets, the city lights casting a soft glow on the sleek car's interior. He turned to her and smiled, his hand resting casually on the steering wheel. You know, I can take you places no one else can, he said, his voice low and enticing. You could be more than just a campus big girl. You could run this town. She leaned back in the seat, allowing the cool night air to wash over her. What do you mean by run this town? She asked, her voice more flirtatious than she intended. Femi chuckled. I'm talking about using your beauty. This was the turning point. The line Lola had drawn between her two worlds began to blur. The church girl, the choir singer, the daughter of a pastor, was starting to disappear. The days that followed felt like a whirlwind for Lola. Femi's words echoed in her mind. It didn't take long before they were inseparable. Femi took her to exclusive parties, introduced her to all kinds of people. Lola was no longer the quiet church girl. She was the queen of every room she entered. But the cost was beginning to show. Lola found herself staying out later and later, trying to maintain her social status. She would skip lectures. She would lie to her parents about where she was. She began to lose touch with who she had been before. Her family, her faith, the girl who once sang gospel songs in her father's church. Those memories felt distant now. It wasn't just the pressure of her new lifestyle that was affecting her. There was also growing tension between her and Sandra. Lola had always seen Sandra as her closest friend, but now Sandra focused more on school and went outing only occasionally, but Lola was totally lost in the fast lifestyle. One evening, while they were in their hostel room, Sandra finally spoke. Lola, you've really changed. You're not the same person I met when we were in 100 level. I know being a campus big girl seems fun, but don't lose yourself. Don't forget where you came from. Lola stared at her, a mix of guilt and anger bubbling up inside her. Don't try to lecture me, Sandra. Sandra's eyes widened with hurt. I'm not holding you back. I'm just worried that you're losing yourself. At least try and balance it. But Lola didn't want to hear it. She was too far gone. The allure of Femi, the rush of attention, and the temptation of a life she had always dreamed of kept her locked in a game she couldn't quit. She didn't need Sandra's warnings. The tension between Lola and Sandra grew with each passing day. Sandra's attempts to pull her back to reality only seemed to push Lola further away. Lola felt suffocated by her roommate's concerns, even though deep down, she knew Sandra was right. But the lifestyle she had embraced was too intoxicating to walk away from. Femi, always the smooth talker, could see the shift in her. He was a master of manipulation, using her insecurities to his advantage. Lola didn't realize it at first, but Femi wasn't in this for love. He was using her for his own gain, and she had become nothing more than a pawn in his game. He would tell her everything she wanted to hear, how beautiful she was, how powerful they could be together. One weekend, Femi invited Lola to an exclusive event in Lekki, hosted by a group of Lagos big boys. The venue was an upscale yacht club. As Lola mingled with the other guests, she noticed something that made her uneasy. Femi was more than just charming. He was manipulating the people around him, using her as a stepping stone to further his own ambitions. Lola had become a tool in his game, but she was too blinded by her desires to see it. As the night wore on, she overheard a conversation between Femi and one of the investors. She's got the look, Femi, but can she handle the pressure? You know we're not dealing with amateurs here, the investor said, eyeing Lola from across the room. Femi laughed. Don't worry, she's ready. The realization hit Lola like a cold slap. She was nothing to Femi. He was only using her. Lola excused herself from the party and stepped out onto the balcony. She allowed herself to feel vulnerable. What had happened to the girl who used to sing hymns in church, who believed that faith could move mountains? Where had that girl gone? And was it too late to bring her back? The days following the yacht party were filled with confusion and inner turmoil for Lola. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was caught in a web of her own making. But on the outside, everything seemed perfect. Sandra, sensing Lola's struggle, reached out again. This time, she was more direct. Lola, I've been watching you. I know something's not right. Please talk to me. What's going on? I don't even recognize you anymore. Her voice was filled with concern, but Lola just waved her off. It's nothing. I'm fine, she replied, forcing a smile. Femi had noticed her distant attitude and was quick to act. He began showering her with more attention, but Lola wasn't fooled. She could see the manipulation in his eyes. That night, Lola lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. The pressures of her double life, church girl by day, baddie by night, were beginning to feel unbearable. The next day, Lola decided to confront her reality. She texted Sandra, "Can we talk?" Within an hour, Sandra arrived in the room. Lola was nervous, unsure of what to say. They sat down, and Lola finally let the words spill out. I've been pretending, Sandra. Pretending that everything's fine. But I feel like I'm losing myself. Femi, I thought he was in love with me, but I realized he is just using me. Sandra's eyes softened, and she reached out, taking Lola's hand in hers. I'm glad you're finally seeing the truth. But Lola, it's not too late to change. You're stronger than this. You don't have to keep living for other people's approval. You can take back control of your life. That evening, Lola sat in her room. Sandra's words still echoed in her mind, offering her a lifeline. You're stronger than this. You don't have to live for other people's approval. The thought of walking away from Femi terrified her. He had promised her the world, but now she was beginning to realize that his promises were empty. Despite her inner turmoil, Lola couldn't stay away from the life she had created in the four walls of University of Lagos. The allure of the spotlight, the parties, the attention. It was too strong for her to resist. Sandra's attempts to talk her out of it had failed. Lola would tell herself that she would only indulge for a little while, that she would get back to her old self soon enough. But soon enough never came. The more she immersed herself in her slay queen lifestyle, the more she became convinced that this was the life she was meant for. She continued hanging out with Femi and his circle, and wearing the kind of clothes that turned heads wherever she went. But what Lola didn't expect was that the world she had built for herself would eventually collide with her reality in the most unexpected way. Lola's parents paid her a surprise visit at school. "Lola, we're in your school." Her mother's voice came through the phone, her tone almost too casual. "We've been meaning to visit for a while, and we thought we'd surprise you." Lola's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't expecting her parents to come to her school. "Mom, okay," Lola replied, her voice a bit too forced, trying to sound calm despite the storm of anxiety in her chest. As soon as the call ended, Lola rushed to her closet. She scanned the rows of clothes, feeling the weight of her choices. She wore something that would make her parents not notice any changes, something modest, and covered her long braids with a scarf. When her parents arrived, Lola tried to keep up the facade of confidence, greeting them with a bright smile as she stepped out of her dorm. Her mother and father stood in the parking lot, waiting for her, and Lola couldn't help but notice the concerned look on her mother's face. Her father, who was usually quiet, kept his gaze fixed on the ground, not saying a word. "Lola, it's so good to see you," her mother said, pulling her into a warm hug. But Lola could feel the tension in the air, the unsaid words hanging between them. As they walked to the nearby canteen, Lola couldn't shake the feeling that her parents were not pleased with what they saw. Her mother's eyes lingered on Lola's outfit, and her father's silence felt deafening. The conversation began awkwardly, with her mother asking about her classes and how things were going at school. Lola answered with half-truths, but she could tell her parents weren't convinced. "Lola," her father finally spoke up, his voice heavy with concern, "we've heard things from your cousins and neighbors back home. Things we never thought we'd hear about our daughter." Lola's heart dropped. She tried to laugh it off, but her father's piercing gaze stopped her. "Your uncle saw you at a club last week. Is that true?" he asked, his tone steady but full of disappointment. Lola swallowed hard, her chest tightening. She had always been able to keep up the charade with her parents, making them believe she was focused on school and staying true to the values they had instilled in her. But now the truth was coming to light, and she couldn't hide from it anymore. "It's not like that, Dad," Lola began, but her voice faltered. She had no explanation that would make sense to them. How could she explain her life now? "Lola, we didn't raise you like this," her mother said softly, a hint of tears in her eyes. "This isn't the life we want for you." Lola could see the disappointment in their faces. They had always been proud of her, up until this moment. Later that day, back at her hostel, Lola sat in front of her mirror, staring at her reflection. The reality of her parents' visit had hit her hard. She had tried to push it away, but she couldn't ignore the truth. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Lola opened it to find her mother standing there, her eyes swollen from crying. "Lola, we didn't mean to hurt you," her mother said, her voice full of emotion. "We just want you to know that we love you and we're scared for you. We want you to come home with us." Lola's heart ached as she looked into her mother's eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom," Lola whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't know how I got here, but I promise you I'll change." The journey back home was filled with a heavy silence. Lola's parents didn't say much during the ride. Her mother had been crying on and off, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, while her father focused on the road, his grip tight on the steering wheel. It was clear that the trip had taken an emotional toll on both of them. For Lola, the weight of her actions pressed heavily on her chest. When they arrived at her family home, the familiar scent of the house hit her instantly. It smelled of fresh laundry and the wood polish her mother used on the furniture. The house was modest. Her mother led her to her room, a small space with pale pink walls and a bed. The room had remained untouched since she left for school, and seeing it now made Lola realize just how much she had changed. Lola sat on the edge of her bed, her head in her hands, overwhelmed by guilt. Her parents had done everything for her, sacrificed so much, and now she has let them down. Lola nodded. but the tears she had been holding back finally fell. She wasn't sure how she would make things right, but she knew she had to start by being honest with herself and with her parents. Days passed in the quiet comfort of her family home. Lola's parents didn't pressure or shout at her. Rather, her mother encouraged her to reflect on her life. Over the next few weeks, Lola focused on reconnecting with herself. She started attending church again. After the holiday, Lola returned to school a changed person. She began dressing more modestly and shifted her focus to her studies. She cut ties with Femi and became fully committed to her academics. The late-night outings and endless parties became a thing of the past. She had tasted the fast life and realized it wasn't worth losing herself over. Tell me what you think in the comments section. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.